welcome to The Found Cause, where we found a cause and serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my right, your left is...
Theodore under the PC.
You're not under the PC today, whatever. Keep the F as that.
Person of Christ.
Today's special episode, as we guessed, we have a guest, and it's Theodore in place of Sebastian. So, Theodore's an old regular, and he's coming in as their, relative expert? What would you call yourself? Huh? What would you call your guest appearance of this podcast?
Co-founder.
Co-founder, indeed, yes.
But then intermittent participator.
And as of the airing of this episode, our number one most controversial episode has been with Theodore. So if you don't bring in the views, I guess I don't know what to do.
Let's do it.
Before we get into the episode today, Theodore, I just want to talk a little bit. Personal life, work has been pretty stressful, put me under a lot of pressure. So I hope this episode can relieve some, along with be wildly successful, of course.
Sorry. What kind of pressure are you talking about? Like 50 or 100 kilopascals, or?
This is like some engineering talk. You're talking about Pascal. I remember this from chemistry class. I don't know what a Pascal feels like, but I'm probably 80 kilopascals. Yeah, if I had to wager.
Well, if this episode doesn't relieve at least 10 pascals, then I'll take half it for you.
Oh, that's sweet of you, Theodore. It's a bet then.
No. It's a wager.
Pascal's wager. Hey, if you haven't seen our episodes before, you'll know that we do insane intros, and there's another one. Can you imagine? That only took 5 minutes per episode to concoct. Wow, and they should pay us.
Wow.
So today's episode is on Pascal's wager. If you saw the episode title, whatever, you probably didn't want the junk at the beginning. This is what the episode is about: Pascal's wager. It's a classic Christian argument from Blaise Pascal himself, or however you're supposed to say his first name, Frenchman. And the wager goes a little something like, well, I'll pass it off to you, Theodore, since you are the guest lecturer. How would you describe Pascal's wager? What's the basic premise when it doesn't have to be something crazy?
Well, as the guest expert lecturer, it's a fact that there is either God, or there's no God, or there's multiple gods, and then that also has an effect as to eternity, and our belief if there's an afterlife or if the material is all that there is. So Pascal's wager is basically you gotta eventually pick one religion or god to pursue as the most likely, because it could be of eternal significance.
Yeah, I think the classic example of Pascal's wager made by Blaise Pascal himself, of course, is coming from the Christian worldview, because that's the European religion, right? So Blaise Pascal postulated that it's better, as Theodore was just saying, to believe in God than to not believe in God, because if you're wrong, well, then who cares? You weren't going to benefit anyways from not believing in God. And then if you are right, you've just avoided hell, because if you don't believe in God and he's real, well, then you go to hell, right? So the better position to take is to default to believing in God. Now, just as a preface, I don't think Blaise Pascal's wager, it was very serious at his time. I don't think he thought it was some proof in his time, nor do I think it's very good to be just whipping it out in general. We've said in this podcast before, I would hold to the kind of theology, principle, effort that you should be putting out when you're sharing. So if you're a Christian, you're sharing the gospel, you shouldn't try to use strange philosophical proofs like Pascal's wager. It's fine, and we're going to talk about it today. It is a tool in the tool belt, but I would always say the very first thing you should do when you're sharing the gospel is to just share the gospel. Because if you're a Christian, you would agree with the Bible and that with Romans 1 that says that everybody is suppressing the truth. They have the truth, they're suppressing it of the knowledge of God. So yes, I understand that people say they don't believe in God, and they believe consciously they don't believe in God, but inwardly God has imprinted the image of himself on every single human being. So if you give the gospel, that is that there is a God, one true God who owns all, right? He's perfectly just, and we've sinned against him as a species and individually, all of us. So the only way to be reconciled to him is through the payment of that sin, and the payment for sin is death. So you have to die in hell to pay the debt, right? So if you die today, you would have to pay the debt, and that's where you bring in the gospel, the victory message of Jesus Christ, that he's overcome sin by dying without sin himself, so that he could pay the debt of all of his ones that he's going to save. So I would say you always start with the gospel, right? That's the best way to share. So Pascal's wager is fine, but it's not a foolproof thing. I wouldn't use it as your go-to weapon. You can use it as a bit of your argumentation, but it should never come before you give the gospel. You should never leave a conversation where you're trying to share the gospel without having shared the gospel. That's kind of the gist. And with that said, though, Theodore, you're pretty familiar with some of the attacks against Pascal's wager from atheists, because it's simple enough that it's easy enough to make a short video on. We're not going to make this video short, because how could we? Found gods can never make a short video. But can you give a brief synopsis, and I'll chime into on what atheists have to say against Pascal's wager?
Well, one is that there's way too many religions to choose from or gods to choose from, so how am I supposed to choose at all? And then well,
that's kind of the main one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we'd watched some reactions before, so we won't do a reaction video here, but we could. There's plenty of arguments on the internet, short ones, if you want to go see what modern day atheists are saying against Pascal's wager. Of course, most of them take a couple different approaches, right? Because atheists are varied, just like anybody else. But the main approach is that, you don't just have to choose between the Christian God and the non-Christian God. You have to choose between all the potential gods, all the potential beliefs. And if you believe that essentially ideas can go on infinitely, well, then there's an infinite amount of different possibilities for gods. And some of those gods might damn you for not believing in them, and some might damn you for believing in them, right? So there's an infinite list. So if you actually choose to believe in a God, you'd be equally damned amongst all the other possibilities, and therefore, it's a wash to believe in any God, and therefore the agnostic or the atheist that decides not to believe in God is equally as not smart, not playing the odds well as anybody that chooses to believe in anything. So that's kind of the general gist of disproving Pascal's wager, from an atheist point of view. However, the general position that I would take, and we're going to take in this episode, is that, I guess you could take that position. No rational person here on Earth in the 21st century is believing there's actually an infinite amount of potential truths, right? It's not possible logically, unless we disregard the laws of logic, that there is a God who is God and simultaneously doesn't exist, right? So we've already knocked one off of infinity. That's a coherent thought,
and that's
but
potentially
it's
one on our board. The
atheist, you mean?
The coexisting.
Oh, coexist. Yeah. So we will bring up a tier list of religions soon, because I think a much more reasonable way to approach Pascal's wager, if you want to include non-Christian gods, is to take the historical religions of the world right now, right? Because if there is a truth, and it's by a God that's worth worshiping, that's ready, that has consequences for not worshiping him, well, his truth would be somewhere in the world to be able to find, right? Is the argument I would make. So if his truth is somewhere out there that you'd want to be able to find, then it must be one of the existing religions, or it must be findable in some way. It's discernible in some way. And so we're going to take a look at the finite list, and decently finite list, of current philosophies and religions out there that have to do with soteriology, that is the study of how you're saved. Of course, if the truth, without importing any of my own theology into it, if the truth is not one of these things, it also wouldn't have consequence with your death. Because again, if there's a God who's going to punish you, he's going to have given you the way out of being punished, right? So you'd have to know it. You'd have to be able to know it. Now, I've heard some atheists complain even about that, because they're like, oh, what about little babies born in Chad who die before they can know anything? They don't have a chance to know the truth, right? So understandably, from the Christian perspective, we know that God is just, so I'm coming from a Christian worldview. I'm not going to get off my Christian worldview to play that kind of game, but I'll just speak the gospel to whoever's giving that argument. Plainly that there is a God, that he is just, and so I'm kind of just going to dump your argument, right? We're going to talk about truth, because I know you're hungry for truth, whoever's listening. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the potential truths that are reasonable.
Deferring to babies doesn't take the blame off of you.
Surely, yes, because you're currently not a baby in Chad, right? It's a whataboutism to say, what about, those scenarios.
We're all judged individually.
All right, so we're going to go to the tier list. See you in a second. All right, so we're teeny tiny here in this corner now, but hopefully you can see the tier list. Of course, we're blocking a portion of it, but whatever, it'll clear up as we go. If you've never seen one of these before, you probably haven't been on the internet too much, but the way it works is that we've got a tier list, meaning there's different tiers of religions, some good, some bad. Now, normally, like if we're rating movies or video games or something, the top tier is called S tier, but we've named it Jesus tier because, as you might imagine, it's a Christian podcast. We're going to put regular, fundamental, good, biblical Christianity in its broad terms up at the Jesus tier. So I'm just going to put that there right now. Yeah. So no surprises there, of course. Presupposing that that's the truth, right? We've done a million videos. We've got 89 or 90 now podcasts. So if you want to see our opinions on why we defend Christianity, I would go refer to our podcast or any of the myriad other apologetics. But we are mainly going to focus this episode on where other religions fall short. So that's why we've got the Jesus tier. Now, again, it's not the scale. So the Jesus tier is way above A tier. So it's not like A tier is almost Jesus tier. It is way above. So again, the Jesus tier is elevated beyond your regular S tier. But let's go through sequentially then, Theodore, and rate some of these religions, giving not just their possibility, their probability that they might be true, right? But also is it a worthwhile religion? Do you gain much from believing in it? I think that would be the rating system here. So not only is it possible and coherent, but also is it something that you gain for believing in it? Does it benefit people who believe in it? That kind of thing, right? Any other criterion you want to add to our tier list before we?
I was just going to go over the 3 tests of truth.
Yeah, do it.
3 tests of truth. I don't know off the top of my head. Okay.
This is our scholar in residence.
Logical consistency.
Oh, yeah.
Experiential relevance. And...
All right, hit a cut. Finest thing.
Okay, so I had the 4 criteria is 1, origin, meaning, morality, destiny. And then the 3 tests for that would be internal coherence or logical consistency, external correspondence or empirical adequacy, and functional adequacy or experiential relevance.
So if we were writing a doctoral thesis on this, we'd probably do every single category of those, right? And fill them out in depth for each of these religions. However, not only would we have to put many cuts in because I'm not prepared to fill all that in for any of these religions, we'd also make it like a 5-hour episode. So we're going to not go through the full gamut for each religion, of course, but you can see that's kind of a way you could attempt to empirically judge each religion based on those 4 criteria and break them down in each different way. So there is a way to do this, I think, in a more scholarly way. But again, the point of this episode is to show that I think that this is doable, that a reasonable skeptic would be taking these religions in mind, not the infinite scope of possibility. So Pascal's wager is still relevant even today, even when we can think about infinity, and they could back in Pascal's day too. They just knew that there was false gods and real gods, real potential gods, I suppose. So that being said, let's run through the list.
Yeah, and also little subcategories you can just throw in are revelations, miracles, prophecies, historicity, the maintaining your story over time.
Sure.
Things like that.
So I guess in layman, like I said in the beginning, is it plausible that it's going to happen, and then is it even worthwhile believing in the religion, right? And all the plausibility comes from a lot of the prophecies or other things the religion might have predicted, or historicity of it, and consistency, and then its tenets, of course, would be the benefits. All right, so we'll start off with the obvious, the first. It's not really a great symbols for atheism, but we've got this little A down here. That's apparently, according to Google, that's the atheist symbol. So atheism. What do you think, Theodore? It is, so some would argue, I mean, definitely the atheists argue that it is the most logically coherent because it requires the least amount of overthinking, right? It's just non-believing in God.
That's good, and I would say atheism, materialism is more believable than a number of religions.
Sure.
Because like founders of religions, you can kind of discredit them and kind of discredit their whole religion.
Yeah.
Whereas atheism doesn't really have a founder. It's just the absence of founding and whatnot. But then that's also its weakness, because we as Christians acknowledge that the world had a beginning and a beginner, or I guess the world was created at one point in time, and therefore it has a creator.
Yeah, and so just for historical context, because atheism has been around for longer than you'd think, atheism was always considered to be the foolish man's decision, right? Like, can't explain it, so meh, I don't care, there's no God.
In Proverbs, yeah. It says, then the fool says in his heart, there is no God.
Yep, and I think it only donned the cape of reason and logic post the evolution age, right? Because evolution gave atheists an excuse to try to create abiogenesis, right? Life from non-life, so that they could create some sort of story, some logical, scientific story around not having a God.
For more information on that, go to somebody tour. What's that? Chemist? Biologist guy?
I don't know. There's a lot of Christian
Frank Tour, maybe?
Perhaps.
T-O-U-R. Sorry about that.
Dr. Lyle, Jason Lyle, another creationist. Yeah. In any case, the problem with so atheism today is not like atheism of the past, in that atheism in the past was just the foolish man's decision. Today we would agree with the Bible that it's still the foolish man's decision. However, it has this moniker of being scientific purely because of evolutionary theology, if I can put that out there. And we would, of course, argue that evolution and evolutionary theology, abiogenesis, is a pseudoscience. It's not provable. I mean, I guess it could be demonstratable that there's principles of it are true, but they have not been demonstrated. They cannot be demonstrated. There's actually not even a working theory of how abiogenesis happens. And because of that, I would say it is not logically coherent to say that life began without a God, without an impetus. Some atheists pawn the question off. They say, well, we don't know how life would have started on this earth, but it could have come here on a comet from some other place that we don't know. But once again, mysterious origins. It's basically creation ex nihilo. Therefore, it once creation ex nihilo, not only with the Big Bang, but also with life was created, and then the continuation and growing of life on Earth. Like, I would also pretty much challenge evolution on every stage of its supposed development. And therefore, I would say it's not logically coherent. Nobody can see your tiny little thing. Oh, this guy.
This is James Tour. Okay. Dr. James Tour.
And he's some creationist, I assume?
Yep. He's an American chemist and nanotechnologist, professor of chemistry, professor of materials science and nanoengineering, and other stuff in Texas.
So we could go into all these details in full episodes. We have done creationism episodes. So again, we've got a bunch of episodes on these, so we won't touch on them too much. But I would say that atheism is not internally coherent. It's not viciously internally incoherent, but I would say it's equally as implausible as a lot of other major religions that we'll have on this tier list. So I'm not going to give it very many points. It's not ridiculous as far as it's not full of fluff, right? Atheism isn't full of a lot of fluff. Now it kind of is, but it's not canon, right? Like, you can be a Neil deGrasse Tyson fan and believe in a bunch of insane, science, quote unquote, theories about things that a lot of atheists do tend to hold to. Same with like aliens, which is another, like, tons of atheists hold the whole alien theories, but that's not necessary, and therefore the base atheisms, there's not a lot of fluff. So I'd put it like C tier for consistency, for internal consistency.
Yeah, I do B or C.
B or C. What about for its worthwhileness? How worthwhile is atheism to believe in?
D?
Well, I might put it like a C, okay? Because the thing it's got going for it is
they try to preserve the planet or something.
Well, there's not in base atheism. I would say the base atheist is just a glutton, somebody who just wants to be as happy as possible in the way he sees fit, which can be good. Hedonism, exactly. That's what I was looking for. Hedonist, which can be good.
Or John Piper is a Christian hedonist.
Yeah, that's actually where I'm gonna go. So I don't think that hedonism is all bad, right? Because sometimes you are hedonistic in wanting joy, and the way you get joy is by doing good things, right? Like helping an old lady across the street, or raising your kids well, or saving humanity in some great way, like inventing a vaccine or something like that. So those kind of hedonistic things are good, and therefore, if you're an atheist hedonist that's just looking to maximize happiness, we should become a Christian hedonist. But if you're refusing Christianity, I think you have a hard time being a true hedonist. You'll think you're pursuing happiness when you're actually making yourself more miserable. However, I think you are able to achieve certain amounts of happiness by pursuing godly things, even if you don't want to pursue godly things. And therefore, I would say the benefits you get from atheism is that you aren't getting anti-truth all the time. You're not adhering to a philosophy of anti-truth besides the rejection of God. And if you become an atheist that hates the Bible and tries to do everything opposite of the Bible, well, then I would say it's D tier, it's bottom. But if you're just an atheist, agnostic kind of person, then I would say you can get some good elements of life in there. So what do you think? B or C? That's the question. I'm going to put it a C because why not? C for
Agreed,
Charles Darwin.
C for oh, no.
I'm going to leave you see there's two atheism symbols. One of them just is transparent, so I guess whatever. It's going to stay there. Next one on the list, the wheel. That's the Eightfold Path for Buddhism. So Buddhism is pretty popular. We've done episodes on Buddhism in the past. Very popular in the U.S. and other European countries as like a freaky mysticism religion for hippies. Not taken particularly seriously in the U.S., much more seriously and theologically sound in places like Southeast Asia and India and China. But so this is not that. So we're not going to talk. This does not include the New Age, hippie Buddhism, atheism that's here in the U.S. We're really going to talk about like believing Buddhism in Vietnam and China and Asia. So internal consistency. Buddhism is a collection of, it's got one founder and a ton of different other teachers that add to it, right? So I guess at base, it has one, Bhagavad Gita story to tell. No. I'm gonna get my Hinduism and Buddhism confused. It's gonna bother people. In any case, teachings of the Buddha, what do you call that? Is one story. Now it's kind of meandering as documents like that tend to be, and who knows how consistent it is with its original version. But it's really bad. Like Theravada, we did an episode on Buddhism. Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism has at least like a structure to it. But Mahayana and Vajrayana, if I'm saying that right, both are Parmigiana. They're both like mystical and don't really have great worldviews. So I'd say being the most generous, Theravada Buddhism is maybe a C tier consistency because it has like a structure for how the world was made and a way to be saved and like an eschatology, like an end times version. But Buddhism is so inconsistent with its different schools that it's pretty inconsistent. But I do want to save our D tier for like the really, really egregious ones. So I'd probably put it C, like a solid C tier for consistency.
Sure. I don't know too much about that.
Okay. What about benefits from Buddhism?
Well, okay, so the thing that obviously stands out is like trying to get rid of desire. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know all the different facets of Buddhism, but this seems to be a pretty overwhelming one across the board. And like Buddhists are asked this or questions like this and don't really have an answer for it, at least to my knowledge. But just the fact of trying to get rid of desire, that just, I don't know, strange. But as Christians and just people in general, there are good desires, like desire for life, desire for others' well-being.
Yep.
Desires to love, to care, things like that. Desire to have self-control, desire to have duty.
Yeah, and therefore, this is where its inconsistency comes, and that it's tenet there to rid yourself of desire so that you can advance in their nirvanic tier. Is a desire in and of itself, so like that's an inconsistency, right? So that's why we're placing it in the C tier for consistency. And for benefits, like you're saying, there are good desires that you forego. And if you look at Buddhist practitioners, like real East Asian Buddhist practitioners, notoriously Nepal, the Buddhist monks were tyrannical in the way they ran things. Now, that's not Theravada Buddhism, it's the particular Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism, but they essentially enslaved whole cities to feed them while they were on their vision quests and would force, like serfdom on populaces. So I would say pretty detrimental to the societies where it's run as the supreme. Usually Buddhism operates as the minority religion, so it's just, weak spiritualism, and it only affects individuals, not large portions of society. So I'd probably sit it at C tier as well for benefit. It could give you some benefit if you let go of bad desires, right? Like lust or lying or whatever else, materialism, but you're also letting go of pretty much everything else. So I wouldn't put it at B tier. I'd put it
And
at C
sometimes
tier.
there's a parent that becomes Buddhist, and then they kind of have to neglect their family, at least to a certain degree.
Yep.
But then even then might try to justify the desire to see their child or their spouse once a month or something like that.
Yeah.
But just a little experiential anecdote.
All right.
Thrown in there.
I'm gonna throw it a C tier too. What do you think? C tier?
Sure.
C tier. C for Chandragupta? No. That's Hinduism. Okay. Leaving it our way. Next one. What a great symbol we've got for it. Coexist. If you can recognize our little blue box here, portion of the coexist sign. These are the universal Unitarians, those who believe that there's many paths way to heaven. Not to be confused with like crystal loving New Agers, but this is more of the like pseudo Christian, again, universal Unitarian believers. Let's talk first benefits, because I think plainly it's probably the most inconsistent of all these religions, because it's trying to simultaneously believe in all of them, and while not really proposing a particular truth in and of itself. So, benefits.
I mean, you ideally get along with everyone.
Yeah, ideally. Of course, you're like denying that anybody knows any truth, but yeah, I mean, you're not like picking a fight particularly, are you?
Benefits, there's no arrogance because nobody knows anything. Or nobody
Well,
has
there is
truth,
arrogance,
but
'cause
everybody
you know
has
it.
the truth.
Yeah, but yes. Okay.
Everybody has their own way, so everybody can be equally arrogant.
Yeah, pretty passive. I think, like in actuality, it comes from Christianity, right? It's Unitarian Universalist Christianity. So they do typically take some of the tenets of Christianity, some of the tenets of the New Testament. Like it depends on your weird Unitarian Universalist church, but often they will read the New Testament, and even if they don't take it as authoritative, they'll take it as decent teaching, right? So I would say you do get some benefit from godly wisdom, from the Gospels, from the portions of the Ten Commandments that they appreciate, right? Portions of the Sermon on the Mount that they appreciate. Of course, they knock the ones they don't, but part of the truth is better than no truth. So I'd probably put it at B tier for benefit and a D tier for consistency, which would place it right at C tier. What do you think?
I was thinking that would be one of the ones that would fall in the D right off the bat, but just because of the contradictory nature. But with the benefits, it kind of does equal it out, I think, to C.
You know what? I'm not that worried about offending Universal Unitarians. So we should just put it in D tier. We're gonna have like a whole stack on C tier, so we should probably just kill
Should
it.
we have an E tier then?
It's too late.
Okay.
So we're doing it. D tier.
I mean, can we leave it at C for now and then? Oh, well, yeah, others might be C.
D tier. Next on the list, the one I was confusing with Buddhism, Hinduism. How could I forget? Hinduism. Let's first talk consistency. So, Hinduism, another polytheistic, like Buddhism in a way, in that it's got a bunch of tradition that adds into its what do you call it? Its corpus, its body of works, of texts. Of course, there's some main works from Hinduism, like the Vedas, right, that you would consider to be core Hindu teaching. But from the comments on our reaction to that Dharma Speaks video, there are many Hindus who definitely want us to know that Hinduism does not know one true path to God, right? It's always learning, always exploring, and always growing and changing the way it believes about things. Now, there are, of course, Hindu fundamentalists who would disagree, but whatever. I'm not a Hindu expert, nor do I really need to pick a fight. In any case, I would say that Hinduism is viciously inconsistent because different gods do different things in different stories, not only historically, but even as Hindus have tried to come up with a unified theology, like a unified history of like, oh yes, this was the creator god, this is the only creator god, this is the only cow god, this is the only milk god. Different principalities and localities in India today continue to have different deities for different things. Like there'll be multiple milk gods across India. And again, they've tried their best to centralize. So I think plainly this is a religion, to the honest man, that has grown out of local beliefs, and they have all been stirred together, right? And the fact that they don't really care that there's inconsistencies almost makes it worse. So it's probably equally as inconsistent as coexisting Unitarian Universalist to me.
Yeah, I think it's viciously close to coexisting.
Yeah,
but I think they have a little bit more devotion, and I don't know, community maybe.
Well, let's think about benefits, because I think it does have more benefits. Probably sits kind of close to Unitarian Universalism actually, as far as benefits too, because Hinduism does promote some good virtues.
Yeah, and they do have like a
virtues.
community, and they like offer offerings or whatever to their gods, which I guess ends up going to the priests or whatever that maintain them in the temples. But yeah, similar benefits, but a little bit better, I guess. More devoted.
Perhaps maybe a little bit worse, because it doesn't have the Christ teaching. It has like basic human teaching.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But it kind of...
A little worse than Unitarian Universalism, but a little better than coexisting. Is it atheistic coexisting? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose. I think you're seeing where this is going. This is going to be another C tier one, right? Because it's got like B tier benefits, D tier consistency, C tier, and because I am afraid of our Hindu viewers, I'm going to put it on C tier. All right.
Woo!
Okay, this brings us to if any Christians are actually still watching. This is our first like super controversial opinion as far as Christians go. This is Catholics, as denoted by the Pope hat. So Catholics, we've talked about this in the episodes prior. So if this is going to come as a shock to you, I apologize. But we would be of the opinion that Catholics share a Christian history with true Christians today. However, they split from the Christians officially. I mean, people can come up with all sorts of doctrines that they disagree with, but officially, we would say the Catholic Church diverged from the Catholics, the Roman Catholic Church diverged from the Catholic, like God's capital C Church, in the 1500s at the Council of Trent, where they expressly, as a church, as a Roman Catholic Church, denied salvation by faith alone. They believe in a works-based salvation. Now, I understand, especially in the U.S., they hate saying that and saying that we don't believe in works-based salvation. So I understand the arguments against it. I don't have all day to talk about it, but it's very close to traditional Christianity. But we would say it misses the gospel, which is the difference between Jesus tier and everything else is the gospel. So it's not getting Jesus tier. It's not a co-Christian religion. However, let's talk about consistency.
That's if you're like we're going the hardcore Orthodox Roman Catholic.
Yes. I mean, there's plenty of really awful non-Orthodox believers as well in Catholicism.
80% Catholic.
Well, there's the most charitable Catholic is like somebody who calls themselves Catholic, but they're really a true Christian, right? They believe in salvation by faith alone. I don't think they really exist. However, if your grandma's that or whatever, I don't need to stab you, okay? I don't know why this. My question is, I don't know why they keep calling themselves a Catholic, right? I understand there's a lot of tradition behind it, so it's not. I'm making room, but I would say for the majority of Catholics, they are not saved because they don't have the gospel. And that being said, there's a lot of Catholics who they don't know Catholic doctrine at all, but they still aren't saved because they believe in, all of South America, for example, very much into syncretism, mixing with a bunch of local traditions and old gods, Our Lady Guadalupe instead of Mother Mary, and whatever. It's still not proper Christianity. But this we'll talk about just by the book Catholicism as opposed to all the weird pagan Catholicism. So consistency for by the book Catholicism, I would say, is pretty high. Mm-hmm. It sticks to the Bible plus the Apocrypha, but whatever. It of course rewrites church history to fit in the Catholic Church where it didn't really exist. So it's not Jesus tier consistency because it does have fake history in there about the Pope and when dogmas came into existence and the fact that Mary was bodily raised and other things like that we would not agree with. Doesn't have consistency with scriptures, but that's A tier. I mean, it's far better than atheism, Buddhism, Hinduism coexisting. And then benefits. All the benefits of godly morality. I can't think of, besides the, idolatry and the gospel rejection, which is, again, what keeps A tier from Jesus tier. It promotes godly virtue, right? All the godly virtues of the Bible.
Yeah, it does.
with maybe like a couple weird exceptions that you could whine about, like being being anti-birth control, right? It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know that we would call that a Christian virtue. It's just kind of like a thing that they think it's Catholic virtue. It's not necessarily a Christian virtue, but maybe that's the B tier. Knocks down to B tier. But I would think it's so consistent with Christianity as far as values that it promotes. I think it would just go A tier.
And there are some. Catholicism can also help you work or do good works a bunch, but then also it can, on the other hand, it can also enable you kind of, because there's a lot of Catholics that do whatever they want to do and then just go to confession.
Oh, get penance or whatever, yeah. Or not penance, the opposite. Yes, they just go and confess. Okay, well then I'm going to throw an A tier. Any objection?
A tier, yeah.
All right. A tier for...
There has to be that
apostolic.
Buffer between
yes. Again, big chasm, but yes, that's where it sits. Next one on the list, Islam, the moon and crescent. Crescent moon, I should say, and the star. Islam. This, do you know, I mean, we've said this on the podcast before, but do you know that in the Middle Ages, they widely considered Islam to be a heresy as opposed to heathenism? Like today, I think Islam, is like as different from Christianity as Buddhism or something like that. But, I mean, it's not that different because they do claim to have something about Jesus, right? But back in the Middle Ages, they considered it a heresy, like Gnosticism or some of these other things that like tried to pervert the Bible as opposed to just getting rid of it. I think of them as having a totally different holy book, the Quran. But in theory, they respect the Bible, called the Injil, the New Testament particularly, because that's what Muhammad was kind of doing, or the writer of the Quran was kind of doing, whatever your thoughts are on that, was trying to bring in Jews and Christians into Islam, to call them people of the book. There's a lot of respect put on them in the Quran, at least. And so, in a way, it's kind of like Catholicism and some of the other ones that are spin-offs of Christianity, in that it's a spin-off of Christianity, right? So it takes a lot of the regional virtues from Christianity that had already existed prior. So I would say benefits of Islam. It's not like Catholicism in that it does have a lot of bad benefits that we would a lot of bad benefits, a lot of bad things that happen to its adherents, like mistreatment of women and bad punishments for crimes, like getting your hands cut off for thieving, obviously not proportional to the crimes, not consistent with God's law. So it's not great, but it does have, like, there is punishment for thieving, so that's cool, right? It's not just like there's no justice kind of thing in Islam. It can promote lying, but I would say for the most part, for most truth.
It can promote killing too. But.
And it can promote killing and war. So I don't know. As far as benefits, would you say B or C? Or D? I mean, I'm leaning towards B.
C, yeah.
But it does have the whole jihad thing, so... Yeah.
So I'm leaning towards B, but there's the whole jihad thing.
Well, if you look at, what I'm trying to, jihad's probably a bad way to say it, because I'm actually thinking, like, if you look at Islamic countries, Islam has taken the center of the world, the greatest countries on earth, the most populous, the richest, the most important countries on earth, and made them dirty sandholes. That's, the land has been cursed. Like the most fertile soil on earth is now, for the most part, disgusting. The governments are corrupt, the people are corrupt. It essentially made third world countries out of first world countries. So I think the result should kind of speak for itself. However, it might be a little unfair to Islam to make that kind of comparison, because if Hinduism had moved in, probably would have done the same thing. So it might just be like a fall from grace that is so apparent when Islam is done to the Middle East. So I don't know. The argument is between B or C tier.
Man, I wish there was a tier between them.
Well, let's talk consistency then. So I would say for benefits, it's going to hit C tier for me. I think I'm going to plop it there. Okay. But for consistency, it has one Quran. That's cool, right? There's weird theories about like who Muhammad actually was, if it was really Muhammad, if Mecca was originally Petra. I mean, there's a lot of like weird theories like that. But as far as like traditional Islam goes, its narrative is organized, right? Very organized, consistent as far as what it says. I mean, there's different sects of Islam, but to be fair, we there's also different sects of Christianity, right? Not quite as different typically, although Catholicism, I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm not even going to speak to it. There's different sects of Christianity, there's different sects of Islam. We're just talking Islam as a whole here, not Shia, Sunni, Ibadi.
And we'll get to another sect of Christianity.
Yes, we will.
Rainbow Christianity.
Yep, and JW.org and a lot of them. But I don't know. I think Islam is a pretty consistent narrative. I would give it a B for consistency, because obviously it's not like it's not consistent with what it says it's consistent with. Like the Injil, the New Testament, and the Old Testament are not consistent with Islam, right? Islam teaches different law, it's a different God. They claim it's the same God, but it's really not. They give stories about Jesus that never happened, that were part of the Gnostic Gospels that didn't even come out until like 300 years afterwards. Of course, Muhammad or the writer of the Quran would have known that. So it's not perfectly consistent. It's not as consistent as Catholicism, for example, which is not perfectly consistent either, but whatever. But I would give it a B because it has a story that makes sense. So
yeah, I was thinking B's really empty right now anyway. So.
It's lonely, huh? Okay. Well, I'd say like B to C for benefits and B for consistency. We'll put it at B. All right.
It's an Abrahamic religion. So
they say, yes. Okay, next on the list. JW.org. Now this, don't be confused. We needed some symbol for like close near Christian cults. So Jehovah's Witnesses are probably the most well known, at least here in the U.S., as far as being a close Christian cult. But this includes like the Moonies, Providence, Seventh-day Adventists, Mormons. Mormons would be another good one that we could have put here. Mormons just don't have a great symbol. So JW.org, and it says it right there in the tin. That's what it is. So this is all like near Christian, weird, shifty cults. Not Christians, they still fall short of Jesus here, but I would say they're going to hit pretty close to where Catholicism is, right? So most of them adhere to the Bible, even Mormons, though they believe it is missing many plain and precious parts, as Joseph Smith said, they still generally hold the Bible. They supposedly read it, so if they're being good, and they adhere it again to general moral principles from Christianity. So I'd say benefits and consistency are both around A. Now, depending on your strange Christian cult, it could really fall fast on the whole benefits portion. Like if you're in Jehovah's Witnesses, the benefits can fall really fast because of the whole, culty atmosphere where they, shun you and kick you out and don't let you read other versions of the Bible and things like that and push you to work in kind of slavey kind of conditions. But you could also be in a fine place. So I would say because it's such a broad category, I'd be tempted to put it A because it's close enough to Christianity that I'd put it A. Could be B. Like, is it better that somebody's a Catholic or a Jehovah's Witness? Probably Catholic. I don't know. What would you say?
Oh, yeah. But is it better that someone's a Jehovah's Witness or
Muslim?
Yeah. I'd put it probably in A minus.
Yeah, it's so broad. Because honestly, I'd probably say like Muslim, Jehovah's Witness, kind of around the same. But Seventh-day Adventist is a little closer to Catholics to me because it's like just barely short.
Okay.
But Mormons, it's like a B, pretty solid B. It's really broad. Maybe we should
put it in B because we we're
contending here. I'm gonna put a B. Yeah, for all the Catholic fans out there.
Yeah, combining other cults with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. All right. The star. So pentagram.
Yeah.
We need another weird symbol. So this one's another broad category, but this is to represent all like Wicca and Satanists. Okay, a New Age we're gonna put in there. Now, this star doesn't show up very well on our tier list either, so I actually have that pink symbol. That's New Age as well, apparently. So that's the one that's going to stand for this New Age, Wicca, Satanism. But whatever. Very broad category, but kind of all the same thing. It's all trashy, made-up religion that doesn't come from any history. It just comes from somebody's butt. And they admit it, essentially, like, it's not historical. We're just making it up as we go. It's like ancient tradition from spirit that I talked to when I was high. That being said, viciously inconsistent. So D tier for consistency. We've done a couple of videos now on Spirit Science, which is a channel that tries to make New Age consistent, and it tries its very best, and it's still crazy, absolutely crazy. not consistent at all. They don't even care that it's not consistent. Like they're perfectly happy, just like Hindus or I guess universal Unitarians, to hear other people's theories and be like, yeah, sounds good. Like the world is actually one giant bowl of water. Oh yeah, that's fine. I believe that it was breathed out from a dragon, but whatever, here together. So terribly inconsistent.
Sure, your ideas probably exist on that planet Dump over there.
In the fourth dimension, yeah.
Planet Dumpo.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody.
Yeah.
Doompo. That's the planet.
So for consistency, I'm going to put it D tier. And for benefit, Satanism, Wicca, New Age, pretty sure you quickly develop like terrible schizophrenia, night terrors, other such terrible things. So I'm going to go D tier, probably the most dangerous of like religiosity on the ranking here.
Coexist almost seems like it should go C tier now. Because we have those two.
You want to upgrade it? You're really pushing for coexist. I guess C for coexist kind of works, doesn't it? Okay, let me give an upgrade then.
We're upgrading just so we can make room for Wicca New Age.
Can't really see him, but okay. So we've plopped it on D tier. Next one on the list, the Rainbow Cross. It's kind of cut off too, but whatever. The Rainbow Cross. This represents, as you might have, no, the rainbow is God's color. So kind of feels bad using it to represent what the world uses it to represent here, but whatever. I think we all know what the Rainbow Cross means. This is hip, woke, super liberal Christianity. So those who believe that God's a woman, but they're still Christians, still read the Bible, that have lesbians in the pulpit, but they're still Christian and still read the Bible, that are promoting gay marriage, or they believe that the Bible's not real, but they somehow still believe in the Bible.
And have worship services for their pets.
And to trees or whatever Union Theological Seminary was doing. Yes, the bucket is wide and extremely shallow because who wants to be a liberal Christian anymore? It's not cool. You don't keep people in for long. Your pastor is a chubby unmarried woman. So there's pretty much the same benefits you get from like being in a fringe cult, as far as like you get a little bit of Christian teaching, but you don't get any of like the good soul edifying stuff that you would get in something like Catholicism. And so I'm leaning towards B tier for benefits of believing in hippy dippy Christianity. Could be C tier, but I feel like it's a little better than Buddhism or atheism. Like it tries. Obviously a bunch of lies. It's terribly inconsistent. So consistency, it's a D tier because it's like attacking its own existence, right? It attacks the Bible, which is where it derives its truth. It attacks God's word, which I'm just repeating myself now, but it attacks God's word, which it also says is the truth. So it's terribly inconsistent. So I would say somewhere between B and C. We could put it at B. It just feels like, yeah. Here's the question. We'll posit the same question. Is it better that somebody's a Muslim or they're part of a Methodist church? United Methodist with the rainbow flag flying out the front.
I think there's still such a broad range of the rainbow churches.
Yeah.
And the best of them, I'd probably put in B.
Yeah. Let's put B. It'll balance our tier, wouldn't it? Yeah, because yes, the very worst of any of these quote unquote religions is going to be D tier anyways. Like, even though we have a Jesus tier for regular old Christianity, which I guess you could say is Protestantism, but hip Christianity is also Protestantism. That's why we're not making the Protestant cross, just like true Christianity. There are people who misuse, they just beat their worshipers and they steal money from the pulpit and all that type of stuff. So the worst of the worst is always going to be D tier, whatever religion. But I'm thinking we're leaning towards B tier for hippy dippy. Hippy dippy. D tier. That leaves us with two categories left. Now, one we could have put in, but we haven't, is like Eastern Orthodoxy and Eastern Church. The reason we did not is because I would call it pretty much a carbon copy of Catholics. I understand it's very offensive to Greek Orthodox or Syrian Orthodox or whatever. I mean, if you look at the theology, at some points in history, like we did our huge 2.5-hour guide to Eastern Christianity, where we show how Eastern Christianity was real, viable, strong, healthy Christianity for a long period of its life. It's just today, it's not. It's basically committed every single bad thing that Catholics hold to, denying the gospel, salvation by faith alone, weird holding to tradition that doesn't make any sense, dying generally. So I'd call it basically Catholicism in that it's A, its worst it's less than A, but at its best it's an A tier. So I just lump it in with Catholicism. But this symbol, this weird one that you're looking at, this cross with like a ninja star in it, this is actually not really related to Christianity at all. They just stole the star because why not? Or the cross, so why not?
They're great at advertising.
Great at advertising.
So they took a symbol that was quality and made it theirs.
Yep. This is Scientology. If you don't know it already, this is Scientology. So we could make this like every wacko cult, but I'm pretty much going to call it Scientology. And if you have a wacko cult that you know of, you can throw it here too. It's not Christian, again, despite the cross. It's about aliens and thetans in your spirit blood. So it's super possessive of its people. You use a lot of money. Obviously notoriously abusive of its members if you're trying to leave or trying to expose anything or you're caught in one of their traps. Super non-withholding, super hierarchical. So as far as benefits for the user, I'm going to give it a D tier because, the hyper-aggressiveness.
Yeah. They can take complete possession of a person, sign a life contract of 1,000 years.
Yes.
Or I don't know how much it is, but something like that or more.
But as far as consistency, where are you going to put it? Because, it has a theology, it's all in Dianetics and other such teachings. Because I don't think Dianetics has all of Scientology's beliefs. They made up other beliefs. Obviously, it comes from nowhere.
Every single member needs to purchase all of his books. So they all know the same thing.
Kind of, if they get high enough tier.
Uh-huh.
Obviously it's a dumb story. So there's that, but at least it's like an organized dumb story. So I'm thinking it's kind of like Buddhism, like Theravada Buddhism or something. Like it's organized. Dumb, but organized. Like it's close to B.
Oh yeah, BC.
But it's for consistency, yeah. But it's so detrimental to its members, I would put it like a strong C tier. Okay. C for Scientology.
Yeah, on the border of D. But C.
All right. Last but not least, Star of David symbolizing Judaism.
Yes.
So Judaism.
And Jesus was a Jew. Not everybody knows it.
Doesn't everybody know
How
that?
would Jesus rate?
When they have Hollywood movies, when they have never seen a Christian in their whole life and they're trying to represent Christians, they're either hyper charismatic Pentecostals who always want to get bit by snakes, or they are hyper fundamentalists who don't know that Jesus was a Jew and they're skinheads. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's not what any churches are like. Some I guess maybe some strange church out there, but not the majority of churches. In any case, yeah, Jesus was a Jew. Christianity is Judaism, just with the Messiah in it, the teachings of the Messiah. Judaism today isn't what Judaism was during the temple, right? So Judaism had its problems back in the temple days, but if I were godly, I would be a Jew pre-Jesus, because that was the truth, right? That is the God, Yahweh. But when the second temple was destroyed, Judaism pretty much floundered into insanity because it no longer had a temple. It could no longer even obey all the laws that it's supposed to, because you have to have a temple, you have to have high priests, and and they're gone, right? Even at the time, even at Jesus' time, they had lost the Aaronic, Aaronic priesthood, not because they lost them like they couldn't find people from Aaron's descendants, but because politics of the day had ousted the Aaronic priesthood and put in a totally different line. So they'd already started to fall apart even in Jesus' time. But today, there's not even, what do Jews say about the fact that there's no sacrifices? They kind of have no answer, because during the 70 years of exile, when there couldn't be sacrifices because the temple was destroyed, God gave got 100 warnings that was going to happen, that they're going to be in exile for 70 years, is what you do, right? Face towards Jerusalem, all that. But for the 2,000 years about that the temple has been destroyed now, there's no warnings besides Jesus's predictions of the temple being destroyed. There's no warnings. So what's the protocol? I guess you can try to copy what Babylon, but there was a specific time for Babylon. In any case, so I would say it's not very consistent now because it can't even fulfill what it was trying to do. There's no high priest or anything like that.
And they did have some prophecies and obviously quality revelation and whatnot.
Well, yeah, they have the whole Old Testament, right? So like on that, it's Jesus tier on that side of things, right? But I'm talking modern practice Judaism now.
Yeah. Like hundreds of years before Jesus, they had prophecies that could be fulfilled. But then when Jesus came along, they had to reinterpret some prophecies about the Messiah. So that also contributed to the crumbling.
So in that case, they have prophecies that are yet to be fulfilled. So there's some benefit as in like they believe in a Messiah, they believe in heaven. So the problem with Judaism, just like with a lot of these, like Catholicism or Christianity, is that there's a lot of different kinds of Jews. So for the sake of this, I'm going to exclude the hyper-liberal, rainbow flag waving, insane Jews, which there are a very large portion of here in the U.S. because Judaism is such a ethnicity religion related. There's a lot of people who just hate religion, but they still want to hold to Judaism, so they detach all the rainbow flag stuff, and they don't believe in God, and they believe God's a girl, and whatever, all the same rainbow flag hippy dippy stuff. But they're Jews. I'm gonna kill them here. Like I'm not gonna include them in this. I'm gonna call this Orthodox Judaism. And you can throw the hippy dippies in the same camp as the Christian hippy dippies, absolute garbage. B tier, which I guess is absolute garbage. B for garbage. So,
but we're talking about the Ben
Orthodox.
Shapiro.
We're talking Ben Shapiro.
Jews. Okay.
Well, he is technically Orthodox, but he's Orthodox American.
Okay.
Like he's not ultra Orthodox.
Lax.
Because exactly. Because there's ultra Orthodox, which is like the black robe wearing, little spiral temple haired Jews, right? I think of Jews. That's the Jews. Those I would say are like the shining example of what Judaism could be, as far as like being very consistent to the scriptures. Now, of course, do they adhere way too much to rabbinic tradition? Yeah, by definition, right? They're all into reading rabbinic tradition, and so they add in a bunch of stuff that shouldn't be. They keep a lot of traditions they shouldn't, that are just extra biblical, extra Old Testament, just as Jesus warned to the Jews of his day. And in the same way, again, the ultra Orthodox or the most hippy dippy Jew, none of them can sacrifice properly, so none of them can fulfill God's law. So they're inconsistent in that way. So I would say for consistency, they're shuffling between A and B because they do have the whole Old Testament, which is obviously rock solid, but they reject the Messiah. So they're either waiting for the Messiah or they have somehow spiritualized the Messiah as a non-real person.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that, somewhere between A or B in consistency, and I'd say for benefits, it's also between A and B. If they believe in afterlife, then I don't know. I mean, it's pretty similar to Catholicism. I'm tempted to put this as an A.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that at first to put it as an A, but then when you got into more modern Judaism or we can still have it as an A to balance things.
I mean, make no mistake, right? Pre-becoming the Messiah, Jews were the Jesus tier, right? It was the Yahweh tier, right? That was the tier. So we're not saying that Judaism is wrong in that aspect, right? But modern practice Judaism does reject Jesus, and therefore it's not going to be Jesus tier. I mean, Catholics supposedly call Jews and Muslims like the Pope put out this video actually recently, but it's in Catholic doctrine besides the Pope's own words, to say that Jews and Muslims like all worship the same God and are essentially A tier alongside Catholics, which is interesting. So I guess we shouldn't offend the Catholics by putting the Jews right next to them. So I'm gonna put it A tier. And there you go. In about 1 hour, we not only talked about Pascal's wager, but we also made hyper-scientific judgments of all these religions and just coincidentally made a cool step pyramid with New Age theology at the very bottom.
And it's almost a half Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's like a little Christmas tree, exactly. So, unsurprisingly, again, by default, we put the Jesus tier, we have proper Christianity. Then A tier, we've got Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, all other apostolic, quote unquote, churches, and Judaism, which I think makes sense. B tier, we've got Islam, we've got offshoot Christian cults like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or Seventh-day Adventists are all in that category, and then the hippy-dippy of everyone, of all organized Christians or Jews. So the LGBTQ affirming, God's not real, all that hippiness, right there in B tier. C tier, we have atheism, we've got Buddhism, we've got Hinduism, we have coexistism, we've got Scientology and other cults like Scientology, and that's it. And then D tier, we've reserved exclusively for
Satanism,
essentially, right? New Age people, like people who dabbled in the occult, right? That's just freaky. Any last comments, Theodore?
Well, so what do you do?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
If you came to the same conclusion that Jesus is pretty cool and that traditional Protestant Christianity is the most likely, then even if you don't believe it now, one argument is that you still should pursue it. Well, I guess that is the argument of Pascal's wager, that you should pursue it because eventually after pursuing it, you might possibly come to realize that it is true, or even more true than you originally thought, or more likely, more probable than you originally thought.
And I think the purpose of this exercise was to show that, once again, any normal, rational person is looking through the existing religions to find truth, right? As opposed to pulling something out of their own butt. Because again, I guess in theory, maybe you can discern what the truth is via observation, but you'd think that if there is a God, that there's consequences for not believing in him. He would have given some evidences to people in the past too, and therefore you can look to teachings that others have held to find the truth, if it's there, right? And so if it's not there and there is no God, well then you're not going to find anything, right? But these are the major world beliefs. Maybe we're missing a couple, I'm granted, but these are finite. You can definitely look through each one of these and make a judgment on whether or not it's consistent or not, whether there's benefit to believing in it or not, and so it is approachable, and therefore Pascal's wager is a tool in the tool belt. It's not disproven, right? It's equally valid today as it was before. It's not a foolproof thing. Again, as I said at the very beginning of this episode, and in debate, you should share the gospel first. As a Christian, you should share the gospel first. And as an atheist, and as any other non-believer out there, I would say the same thing to you. Repent and believe is the only way to salvation. Like, it's true. I'm speaking to you now. It's true that there is a God who will judge all of us one day. We've all fallen short. We all know our own sins, and we see them plainly, right? We're suppressing the truth that we will be judged one day. Instead, come to Christ, repent, and be freed from sin, paid for by the blood of Jesus Christ, and live instead of dying, right? Exchange death for life. It's the greatest deal on earth. So we'd call you to the gospel. But if that doesn't convince you, if that convicts you but doesn't convince you, you should go ahead. Do the research. Don't waste all your time in life, because life is a short time, but do the research. Check out some of these major religions to try to find truth, and I guarantee you will not find consistency in them like you find in proper Christianity. Now, we define proper Christianity in particular ways. I'll point you to some of our episodes where we share the gospel more in depth, but all that being said, Pascal's wagers, still alive, still kicking.
I was just thinking there, kind of relative to what you were just saying. I memorized Colossians 1 verses 13 and 14, I think, this week, which say, God has, or Jesus has rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son. So God has rescued us and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, Jesus, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. And forgiveness of sins does not happen unless there is repentance for.
Mm-hmm. So that's the call. To anybody listening, Christian or non-Christian, come to the truth. If you are a Christian, reform the truth. There's one King, Jesus Christ. It's not just the Jesus tier. It's not just the truth, but he's also the way and the life. So it's great benefits and consistency both. So that being said, that's why we found our cause in serving that very same Jesus tier, Jesus Christ. I've been Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my right, your left has been...
I've been Theodore, under the PC, person of Christ. Under the person of Christ.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that last time.
We are all under the person of Christ.
Yes, we're all under the person of Christ.
Once we are forgiven.
So until next time, we talk about something completely different. Thanks for listening. If you want to see the rest of our episodes, you can go to foundcause.podbean.com and download all the episodes in audio for your listening pleasure. We also, of course, are on YouTube if you're watching us here. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/foundcause if you want to see our video. We're also on every single podcast listener you can find, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you find your podcast, you can listen to us. So again, until next time, we talk about something completely different. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.